She caught me outside conference room 14 at 8:47 on a Thursday night, when most of the floor was already dark and the cleaning crew had started making slow passes down the glass corridor. "Are you ever going to tell me why you've been avoiding me?" She said it quietly. No edge, no scene, no audience. That somehow made it worse. I still had my laptop under one arm and a stack of printed status reports in my hand. Like paper could save me. For a second, I actually looked past her shoulder, checking the hallway like there might be some stupid excuse left. Emergency call. Client issue. Anything. There wasn't. She stood there in a charcoal blazer with her badge clipped at her waist, calm as ever, watching me with the same steady look she used in board reviews when people tried to hide behind polished language. She had learned that look somewhere long before becoming CEO. Maybe from grief. Maybe from surviving rooms full of men who only respected certainty. "I'm not avoiding you," I said. And the second it left my mouth, I hated myself for how weak it sounded. Her expression didn't change. "You reroute meetings through legal or operations when I ask for you directly. You leave early when I join project reviews. You answer my emails in 3 lines when everyone else gets actual explanations. So let's not do that." My throat tightened. 8 months of this, and she had finally said it out loud. The first time I saw her, I thought I was prepared. I knew the board had hired an external candidate. I knew her name before the announcement email went out. I even knew, in that abstract way people know facts they keep far from themselves, that she was his sister. None of that helped when she walked into the all-hands. Same dark eyes. Same controlled face. Not identical, but enough that my body reacted before my brain did. Felt like the air had gone thin. I remember gripping the edge of the conference table so hard my fingers hurt. For years earlier, her brother had been one of mine. Daniel Parker, 29, systems engineer. Smart in the annoying way that made hard things look casual. He could cut through a broken deployment in 10 minutes, then stay after and explain it to a junior analyst without making them feel stupid. The kind of guy people trusted fast. The kind of guy who said yes too easily because he really believed effort could fix bad planning. We were in the middle of a rollout for a major client when everything started slipping. Bad vendor data, impossible testing windows, executive promises made before anyone asked engineering how long the work actually took. I pushed back. Not once. Repeatedly. I sent warnings. I asked for more time. I told them the team was cooked and somebody was going to make a dangerous mistake. What came back was the usual corporate language. Appreciate the concern. Need creative solutions. Temporary pressure. Everyone step up. I was the manager in the middle, which sounds more respectable than it feels. High enough to see the risk. Low enough not to stop the machine. Daniel volunteered for the overnight stretch at the end. Said he could handle it. Said we were too close to hand off. I knew he was exhausted. I knew all of us were. And I let the schedule stand one more day because I told myself we just had to get through the week. He fell asleep driving home. That sentence had lived in my head for 4 years with a second one chained to it. I should have stopped it. After the accident, there were reviews, statements, quiet legal language, condolences, flowers sent on behalf of the company. The executives who forced the pace kept their jobs. A few policies got discussed, then buried. I wrote a safety proposal and watched it die in committee. I wrote a resignation letter and never sent it. In the end I stayed, which for a long time felt less like loyalty and more like a sentence I decided to serve. Then she arrived. The dead engineer's older sister. New CEO. Reform reputation. Sharp, composed, impossible to fool. A woman who had come back into the building where her brother had been used up and lost. From day one I started disappearing. I switched seats in review meetings. I asked my director to present numbers I should have presented myself. I learned her calendar patterns just well enough to avoid being alone with her. Every time she looked at me, I had the same sick thought. If she ever knew the whole truth, whatever respect she had for me would be over in 1 second. Apparently, from her side, it looked different. Not guilt. Not fear. Contempt, maybe. Resistance. Personal dislike. Now she was standing 3 feet away, waiting. "I know you don't owe me comfort," she said. "But you do owe me honesty." Something in the way she said it took the last route away from me. I looked at the glass wall beside us and saw my own reflection. Tired face, loosened tie, a man almost 40 still acting like a coward in hallways. She must have seen the change in me, because her voice dropped even lower. "Come with me," she said. "And this time don't run." I followed her toward the conference room, already knowing that whatever happened next was going to change everything. She closed the conference room door behind us, and the soft click of the lock sounded louder than it should have in that empty office. For a second, neither of us sat down. The room still had a half-erased budget forecast on the glass wall from some meeting earlier that afternoon. A tray with 2 untouched water bottles sat in the middle of the table. Normal office stuff. Clean, dull, harmless. And somehow that made it harder, because I was about to say something that had been rotting inside me for 4 years in the most ordinary room in the building. She pulled out a chair but didn't sit yet. "I'm listening." I set my laptop down, then the reports, then realized my hands were shaking enough that the pages had gone crooked. I fixed them for no reason at all, just to buy another second. "You asked why I've been avoiding you," I said. "It's because of Daniel." Her face changed, but only a little. Not surprise, more like confirmation. I swallowed. He was on my team during the Helix rollout. I was his direct manager. We were already behind before the real problems started. The timeline was impossible and everybody knew it. Vendor delays, bad testing windows, last-minute scope changes, promises made to the client before engineering even signed off. It was one of those projects where every bad decision gets stacked on top of the next one until nobody remembers where it first went wrong. She finally sat down, still watching me. "I pushed back," I said. "I need you to know that part, even if it doesn't fix anything." I pushed back in writing. I asked for more time. I told them the team was past safe. I said people were making tired mistakes. I said if we kept squeezing the schedule, eventually somebody would pay for it. My laugh came out dry and ugly. They thanked me for my concern and told me to keep the rollout on track. I looked down at the table. And I did. That was the part one had never managed to say out loud to anyone. Not like that. Not without softening it. I told myself I was trapped in the middle. Told myself I didn't have final authority. Told myself one more week wasn't the same as agreeing with them. But that's just cleaner language for what really happened. I saw the risk and I still let the machine keep moving. She didn't interrupt. Not once. Daniel volunteered for the overnight work at the end. He said he could handle it. He always said that. He was good enough that people trusted him with the worst parts, and decent enough that he kept saying yes. I knew he was worn down. We all were. I remember looking at him that night and thinking he looked too tired to be driving anywhere after shift. I remember that clearly. And I still let him take that stretch. My chest felt tight enough to hurt. A few hours later I got the call. The room stayed silent. I rubbed a hand over my mouth and kept going because if I stopped there I knew I might not finish. There were internal reviews after. Emails. Legal language. A lot of careful wording about workload and responsibility and tragic circumstances. I wrote everything down. Every warning, every objection, every place where we could have slowed it down. I even wrote a safety proposal afterward. Formal escalation rights, mandatory rest windows, protections for managers who flagged unsafe schedules. It got buried. I forced myself to meet her eyes. And ever since then, the only sentence that's ever really mattered to me is that I should have stopped it. Not warned. Not objected. Stopped it. I should have pulled him off the project. Shut the work down, taken whatever happened next. Instead, I did what people like me always do when they're trained too well. I kept things moving. Admitting that was the hardest thing I've ever done. If you're still here, please subscribe. It helps me feel like I'm not just talking into the dark. I expected anger then. Or disgust. Or at least that look people get when they finally understand what kind of man they're sitting across from. But she just sat there, very still, with both hands folded on the table. When she finally spoke, her voice was low and controlled. I already knew most of that. For a second, I honestly didn't understand the words. She held my gaze. "When I took this job, I requested every internal file connected to my brother's last year here. Not the public summary. Everything. Email threads, escalation notes, staffing records, archived project memos, rejected proposals. I read all of it. I stared at her. I read your objections, she said. I read the messages where you asked for more time. I read the notes where you flagged fatigue risk. I read the proposal you wrote afterward that no one approved. And I read the draft resignation letter you never sent. I felt the blood drain out of my face. You saw that? Yes. I leaned back in the chair like the air had been knocked out of me. I had forgotten that draft even existed on the server. She looked down for the first time, just briefly. I also read Daniel's performance reviews. In one of them he wrote that you were the best manager he'd ever had because you protected your team when other people treated them like replaceable parts. I couldn't speak. For months I had been living inside the idea that she would hate me if she knew. And she had known. Maybe not the shape of my guilt, but the facts. The real ones. Then she said, "You're not the only person who has been turning one bad season into a life sentence." Something in her voice changed there. Less CEO. More sister. The week before he was gone, she said. Daniel called me late. He sounded tired, but he always sounded tired when he was deep into something. He asked me if he was pushing too hard. He asked if maybe he should slow down, step back, stop trying to carry so much of it himself. Her fingers tightened together. And I told him hard periods pass. I told him he'd regret it if he backed off right before the finish. I told him to trust himself and get through it. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She gave one small, broken shake of her head. So while you've spent 4 years telling yourself you should have stopped the system, I've spent 4 years hearing my own voice telling my brother to keep going. That hit me harder than anything else. Not because it made my part smaller. Didn't. But because for the first time since that call, I was sitting with someone who understood exactly what it meant to replay one conversation forever and find a different place to blame yourself every time. "I thought you avoided me because you couldn't stand me," she said. I let out a rough breath. "I avoided you because I couldn't stand being seen by you." Her eyes stayed on mine, and something between us shifted so sharply I could feel it. Not relief, not forgiveness. Something deeper and stranger than that. Two people, both exhausted from carrying the same weight alone, finally setting it down in the same room. The next morning, nothing looked different, which was almost insulting. Same lobby lights, same badge scan at the glass gates, same people carrying coffee and talking about deadlines like the world had not shifted under my feet 12 hours earlier. But when I walked into the executive floor for the 9 o'clock operations review, she looked up from the head of the table and didn't look through me this time. "Stay after," she said. Just that. Calm, direct. For months, a sentence like that would have made my stomach drop. That morning it did something stranger. Steadied me. The meeting itself was ugly. Staffing gaps, compressed timelines, 2 client teams asking for overlapping delivery windows, finance pushing for leaner headcount on the next quarter plan. The same old language, just with better slides. I could hear all the old traps in it now, maybe because I'd finally said the quiet part out loud. When everyone else filed out, she stayed in her chair and opened a folder. Not a digital deck. Paper. Tabbed, marked, worked through. "My brother's name is on the front page of this draft," she said. "I want that to mean something." She turned the folder toward me. At the top was a title. The Daniel Parker Workload Safety Initiative. Under it were the bones of the thing I had once tried to build and failed. Mandatory rest windows between late shifts. Formal escalation rights for project managers. A staffing review trigger when hours crossed a set threshold. Executive override documentation. If leadership insisted on a timeline after safety concerns were raised, that decision would be recorded with names attached. No more invisible pressure. No more people in the middle carrying blame for decisions made above them. I read the first 2 pages in silence. "You rebuilt this," I said. "I started it," she said. "I want you to finish it with me." I looked up. "You still trust me with that?" She held my eyes. "More now than before." I don't know if she understood what that did to me. Maybe she did. She usually understood more than she said. So that became our routine. Not dramatic, not secret, just constant. We met with HR, compliance, legal, finance, delivery leads, regional managers, and anyone else whose title let them block progress. We mapped where authority actually broke down during high-pressure rollouts. We traced how many times a manager could raise a concern before it got translated into softer language on the way up. We found the quiet points where exhaustion stopped being visible because everyone had learned to treat it like professionalism. Some of the resistance came fast. One senior executive, a man who had built his whole career on heroic deadline stories, leaned back in his chair halfway through a review and said, "If we make the structure too rigid, people will use policy as an excuse not to perform." I felt that old heat rise in my chest, but before I could answer, she did. "No," she said. "They'll use policy to stay alive enough to perform again next week. Is it ever worth it? Trading your life for a deadline? I really want to know if you've ever had to make that choice. Let's talk in the comments." The room went still. Another leader tried a softer version. Talked about culture, flexibility, trusting adults to manage their own limits. She listened, then slid a printed chart across the table showing after-hours load by team, turnover by quarter, and near-miss reporting patterns nobody had bothered lining up before. "This isn't flexibility," she said. "This is pressure falling downward until somebody with less power absorbs it." Watching her work up close changed something in me. From a distance, she had seemed almost severe, all control and precision. Up close, I could see what sat under it. Not ambition, not image. Love sharpened into discipline. Grief turned into standards. She wasn't trying to win arguments for the sake of being right. She was trying to build a place where nobody else would get asked to trade their body for a deadline and call it dedication. And she watched me too. I could feel that. One night we were still in her office close to 10, going line by line through the escalation language. I was arguing for stronger wording around manager discretion when she leaned back and said, "You never stopped doing it." "Doing what?" "Trying to protect people." I looked over from the marked-up draft. "I failed at it." "You kept doing it anyway," she said. "That matters." I didn't answer right away. The city lights were reflecting off the windows behind her, turning the glass into a dark mirror. "Sometimes I think I stayed here because I didn't think I'd earned the right to leave," I said. She was quiet for a second. "And now?" I looked down at the papers between us. "Now I think maybe leaving would have been easier." That earned the smallest change in her face. Not quite a smile, but close. As the weeks moved, people started realizing this initiative was real. Not another listening tour. Not another polished internal promise that vanished once the quarter closed. Drafts became approvals. Approvals became pilot procedures. Managers who had spent years lowering their voices in private started speaking more plainly in meetings because for the first time there was a structure behind the words. Some of the younger staff came to me directly. One analyst said she'd never seen anyone in leadership say, in writing, that rest was a business requirement and not a personal weakness. A team lead in infrastructure